The city of Cape Town is forging ahead with its lobby to be included in the National Police's kidnapping efforts. In the meantime, the city's administration is consulting with international crime-busting agents, all in a bid to crack down on a spate of abductions and an alleged kidnapping syndicate operation in that province. Western Cape Police have revealed it's investigating at least 32 kidnapping cases reported between March and September this year alone. And 2 weeks ago, a Ukrainian woman was reunited with her family after she was kidnapped for ransom outside a business premise in Blackheath. Authorities warn just because the victims are rescued and reunited with their loved ones, it does not mean the cases are closed. Our reporter Natalie Malgas joins us from Cape Town to bring us the very latest on this very disturbing trend. Natalie, morning.
Morning, Dudu. So we spoke to the police a little earlier today who say this is a situation that is getting the much needed attention. They have deployed all the necessary resources to these incidents. And as you mentioned, because some of these victims have been rescued and returned and reunited with their family, that's not to say these cases are closed. They're being investigated with the most senior officers from crime intelligence and detectives across the country being assigned to some of these cases. Just to give you some indication of just how seriously the police are taking this matter. The city administrators too are taking this situation really seriously. They are consulting with international crime busters to arm themselves with the necessary crime intelligence and background and context to how they can improve their policing measures here in Cape Town, especially since we are headed to a bumper festive season. We're expected to see many visitors from across South Africa and international visitors making their way to Cape Town. So this in a bid to make it safer for our international visitors and the locals who will be frequenting many parts of the city. In fact, joining me now, I have a retired FBI agent, and we're about to pick his brain just on how these syndicates actually work. Will, thanks so much for your time. In your professional opinion, how do these kidnapping syndicates operate? How do they pick their targets? Are we just sitting ducks, hoping to not be in their scope?
Well, Natalie, good morning. That's an interesting question, because one of the things you have to look at is you look at your victims, your previous victims, to see if there are any commonalities. In addition to which, you can look at their circumstances. You look at where they live, where they work, if they're high net worth people, and so on and so forth. So it's a combination of things. It's not just one thing.
We heard that kidnapping for ransom is on the increase. And when this ransom is paid, victims are released to their families. There's a catch-22 here. If you don't pay the ransom, your loved one stays in captivity. You do pay the ransom and a dangerous precedent is set. How do you get to curb this really spate of kidnappings, particularly when there's this intention to gain big money?
Well, it goes back to intelligence. Previously, investigations led the charge. Now it's all about intelligence. And what do I mean by that? Simply mean that you have to get people together to look at an issue before the issue arises. Now, in this case, where you have a spate of incidents, I know that there is a task force assigned to this, but you need more than that. You need people who can sit together along with the analysts and the investigators. And they're going to drive the investigations, the analysts I'm talking about. So what they do is they collect information and they come up with a profile. So they're more proactive and predictive as opposed to reactive. Because what you're having now, what you're seeing is reactive policing. Something happens and they respond. Policing in the 21st century has gone beyond that. So we're talking about something called an intelligence center, where you have a plethora of city agencies, investigators, first responders, and so on and so forth, along with the analysts, and they come up with a profile of who the people are responsible for doing this, and most importantly is human intelligence. You need to have people on the ground, because I've been told, and it's my experience, that if you want to have a secret, only one person should know. If more than one person, it's not a secret. So you have these kidnappings where you have 3 or 4 people. Obviously they're talking. And that information should have been gotten way before the incident. So it's intelligence-driven investigations. You got to have your analysts, you got to have your investigators, and you also have to have people on the ground developing sources.
We're hearing from local authorities that in some instances what was initially the common denominator, that's now changing. So the profile of the victim seems to be changing. How do you prevent yourself from being targeted?
Well, there's several ways of doing it. One is if you suspect that you're being targeted, and that is if you look at previous cases, and let's say you're a high net worth person, you change your directions when you go to work or when you go home. I mean, this is just the state we're living in, right? You would think that you could just go to work, go home, and not worry about these things. But you have to worry. And so you're probably going to need private security. You're going to have to change your directions when you travel. And you just have to be very, very vigilant about your space. You can't take things for granted. And until the police and the investigators can get it to the point where they're more predictive and proactive, this is just how we're going to have to live.
How much like the movies is this? When you, as a former agent, are notified of a kidnapping, of some extortion racket underway, how quickly do you get involved, and to what extent do you get involved? Who do you call in? Is it a situation of calling in hostage negotiators and other experts? Who are these experts?
You're right. You get the hostage negotiators and the team. But before you do that, somebody has to report it. If it's not reported, it cannot be investigated. And in some instances, what you find is that the victims' families, they're told that pay the ransom, don't call the police, and so on and so forth. And it's my experience that generally they don't call the police. They figure, they think that they can work it out with negotiators. And by the time they call the police, the situation is way beyond where it should be. But at that point, the investigators, they come in, the hostage negotiators, and then they start talking to people to see if the situation can be resolved. In fact, there's a case that I worked on in South Africa where some scammers convinced this lady that she should invest in a project in South Africa. She did. And then they told her that you need to come look at the project. And when she came, she was kidnapped. I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, that family, they paid the ransom. But the guys were still caught, though.
So what do we do in such a situation? Do we involve the authorities immediately, despite what we may be hearing from the kidnappers?
Immediately. Immediately. Time is of the essence. And so you need to get people involved so that they can do whatever they do best to resolve the situation. Never think that you can resolve it on your own, because you're going to end up paying, and if you're lucky, the victim will be released, but you set a dangerous precedent. And so that's why I'm an advocate for the intelligence-led policing, because they can actually prevent crimes before they happen. It sounds weird, but I've seen it work. They can actually prevent crimes before they happen. Otherwise, you're going to end up in a situation where somebody, it's up to them if they want to call the police or not, even though the police are saying that you should call us immediately. But you know how it is. Families are thinking, well, maybe we don't trust the police, or maybe the police won't get it done expeditiously, or maybe we can work it out ourselves. That's a bad situation.
Just lastly, Will, in your professional opinion, we are seeing these instances on the rise here in South Africa and in cities like Johannesburg and Cape Town. Is this unique to South Africa or even the continent, or is this something that occurs more widely, something that you as a former FBI agent have knowledge of in other parts of the world?
I've seen it happen in Central America, South America, not so much in the United States, and then here as well. So it's on the rise. So let's just hope that our law enforcement professionals do the right thing, which is, yes, you have a task force, but you have to have an intelligence center, because the intelligence center, not only does it serve to address these crimes, but crimes on the horizon that are not here yet, that you can actually look across the world and you can see coming to South Africa, and you can best prepare yourself for that type of situation.
Thank you very much, Will. That, of course, our guest here today, former FBI agent talking about the prevalence of kidnappings here in Cape Town, but also in his professional opinion sharing some anecdotes of other instances in particularly Central America where similar incidents have also been conducted. We're hearing from the city of Cape Town that they are continuing with their lobby to be included in the national government's crime-busting efforts, particularly around extortion and kidnapping. And the Western Cape Police have already told us that this is a matter that they have thrown all the necessary resources at, with well over 30 cases that they've been investigating between March and September this year alone.
So essentially, Natalie, prevention in the form of intelligence is better than cure. Thank you very much for that update.